Everybody has their own favorite kind of acting. Some people like the actors who go out there and ham it up and just play everything to the back row. Some people like actors who take on those suave leading roles and kind of charm you throughout. Some people love actors who can just steal an entire movie based on nothing more than their charisma. And of course, a lot of people love character actors. The guys who come in and they play these supporting roles and they are just reliable every single time. But despite all these different styles of acting that people may or may not agree on, there is one style of acting that everyone agrees on: method acting. Everybody hates it. A lot of people who think they know what method acting is really don't know what it is at all. And there's kind of an open secret in acting circles that the actor who professes to be a method actor usually understands less about the method than anyone else on the planet. I myself got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in theater, and I studied with the great Dr. William Graham, who taught the method. The real method. The Stanislavski System. See, Constantin Stanislavski, the Russian theater director and actor and first studio theater founder, recorded his system in the early 20th century. He was born way back in 1863 and died in 1938. And when he recorded his system, he did it in a series of books. Books in which young actors and students who are unfamiliar with the process are taught, and they learn from a director who takes them step by step through the process. And it's understandable when you read some basics about the method that it can seem a little bit like what we've come to know. When you read things like, it mobilizes the actor's conscious thought and will in order to activate other less controllable psychological processes, such as emotional experience and subconscious behavior, sympathetically and indirectly. In rehearsal, the actor searches for inner motives to justify action and the definition of what the character seeks to achieve at any given moment. But the key two words there are in rehearsal. That's the first part of the method that most people don't understand at all. Another thing they don't quite understand is the time Stanislavski was writing this. He was doing this at a time when Russian theater was almost entirely just actors belting out the words of a script directly to the audience, often not even facing each other or even bothering to memorize any of the lines in the script. The lines were fed to them by someone below the stage, and they would simply bellow those lines out towards the audience. That is very different than the acting we know today. And Stanislavski didn't like that kind of acting. It didn't seem like acting at all. It just seemed like people belting out lines to an audience. So he developed a system that brought actors to a more naturalistic style. A naturalistic style he had already observed in other theaters outside of Russia. So, right from the start, one of the principal things he was doing was just kind of codifying the rules of how you achieve a more naturalistic performance. And how do you achieve that performance? Well, you read the script. There's a scene in the movie My Week with Marilyn in which Marilyn Monroe, played by Michelle Williams, is trying to understand her character with the help of her acting teacher, her method acting teacher, at a table read for The Prince and the Showgirl, directed by Laurence Olivier. Olivier, played by Kenneth Branagh, is also at the table, and when they have some difficulties in getting through the table read because Marilyn wants to find her character, Olivier suggests, well, you're in luck. It's all right there in the script. The great irony of this scene is that Laurence Olivier, he's the method actor in this situation. Marilyn Monroe isn't. She and her acting teacher know somewhere close to zero about method acting. Because if you're trying to discover your character at the table read, you don't get it at all. The table read is exactly what it sounds like. The actors sit around the table and they read the script. Literally just to read it through one time all together so everybody can understand what the story is, what the plot is, how the characters act and react. That's it. That's the table read. You should never, ever be at a table read trying to discover your character. You should be reading the play to understand who the character is first. And you know who would agree with that? Constantin Stanislavski. Constantin Stanislavski wrote 3 books outlining the method. An actor prepares, building a character, creating a role. And Dr. William Graham, when I was getting my degree, had us read all 3 of those books. And those 3 books break down the system in ways that I think would surprise most people. If you go with the chapters of An Actor Prepares, you will find these among the things that the actor is considering as they prepare for their role. Emotional memory, the inner creative state, on the threshold of the subconscious. But when you go to Building a Character, the next book, which takes you further into the rehearsal process, you'll find chapters that probably seem a lot more commonsensical. Towards a physical characterization, dressing a character, character and types, restraint, control, diction, singing, intonation, pauses, tempo, rhythm, and movement, speech, tempo, rhythm. These are all just basics of acting. And in case you're wondering about that second one, dressing a character, well, I've read all 3 of the books because I literally studied the method. It's about picking the right costume. It's about getting a costume for the character that works for both the character and the actor. Once you get past the whole feeling out who the character is, which is just the very, very, very first part of the method, the rest is learning your lines, picking the right costume, improvising with your fellow actors during rehearsals to get a better idea of how you and therefore your character would react to certain situations. It's all just basically how anyone would teach themselves how to act. The best way to illustrate what true method acting is by bringing up actors that fans will often accuse of just playing themselves. Actors have had to deal with this forever. Cary Grant was one of the best examples of this. Many people often said, oh, he's just playing himself in every movie. Well, of course he is. He's an actor. In fact, that's the method. When you're playing a part as an actor, you don't want to become the character because that will lead to a less naturalistic performance. What you want to do is imagine how you would react to situations if you were that character. You're just an actor on the stage, but your character is a doctor raising a family who's going through a midlife crisis. You don't want to try to pretend to be a doctor raising a family going through a midlife crisis. You want to ask yourself, how would I react to these situations? Because I'm the one who's going to be playing the part. And therefore, to make it naturalistic, I should react the way I would react if I was this person. Actors who are constantly trying to play a different person other than themselves, those actually aren't the best actors. The ones playing themselves, those are the actors who get it. Because it's the only person you can play. It's you. You're the character. Unfortunately, one of the things that happened was early students of Stanislavski took a lot of his writings, taught them to other people, and those other people either completely misunderstood or distorted them. Case in point, Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg. Now, Lee Strasberg is probably the most famous teacher of the American method, as it's now called. And Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg worked together with the group theater to teach method acting to their students and fellow actors. Stella Adler herself spent time in Russia learning the method directly from Stanislavski, and was surprised to find out directly from Stanislavski when she of course told him that she and Lee Strasberg had been teaching the method, and the way they were teaching it was of course getting the actors to feel the character. Stanislavski said, "What? That's what you're teaching? What?" It was literally like the Marshall McLuhan scene in Annie Hall come to life. Stanislavski himself said to Stella Adler, "No, that's not the method. That's just the first little stage. That's just kind of understanding how you yourself would react to a situation if you were that character. That's not the whole method. That's just an entry point. That's just where you go to just start the whole production off. It also helps to, learn your lines and pick the right costume and learn blocking and using physical action." He was big on physical action. He was big on using the actions written out in the play to help you understand how to play the role. If you've ever watched the movie Death Trap, Michael Caine and Christopher Reeve make big displays out of actually doing the physical action to help them understand what they're writing better. And that's what Stanislavski was saying. And yet, when Stella Adler went back to New York and told Lee Strasberg, "Hey, by the way, I talked with the very man himself who created this system we're teaching, and he said we're doing it wrong," Lee Strasberg's response was, "Well, that's stupid. I'm going to keep doing it my way." Kind of like learning from a world-class chef how to make a specific recipe, and when the world-class chef tells you how to do that, you say, "Well, that's dumb. I'm making it this way." "Oh, okay, I guess." So Lee Strasberg continued to teach that whole feeling the character out as if it was the entire thing, which is stupid and misses the point. A lot of what they were teaching was that you become the character, which is, of course, the exact opposite of what Stanislavski was teaching. He was teaching the character becomes you. However you say things is how the character is going to say things. There's no need for you to stay in character between takes or between rehearsals because the character's already you. You should just be acting how you always act. When we hear about these method actors who stay in character even when they're not filming a take, or they stay in character during the entire process of making the movie, that's such a misunderstanding. Oh my God, is that a misunderstanding of the method? Since you should be playing the character as you yourself are, using your own intonations and your own mannerisms and your own inflections, when you're not filming, you should be the same as you always are. In other words, if you're playing a part and you go home and your friends and family members say, "Why are you acting so weird?" and you say, "Because I'm in my character," then you're a bad actor. You're not getting it. When you go home, your friends and family shouldn't see any difference at all in you, because the characters become you, not the other way around. That's why people like Jared Leto seem to have no understanding of the method at all. Like none. The fact that they stay in character in between takes and they do weird things to friends and family because they're, into that role, really signals that they don't understand method acting at all. Method actors and the movies is how we've come to know method acting. And of course, if you're going to talk about method acting and the movies, then there's absolutely someone in classic cinema that you have to mention. Of course, Maria Ospinskaya. I'm sorry, did you think I was going to say somebody else? Maria Ospinkaya came to the United States and became famous in Hollywood, playing in movies like Dodsworth, The Wolfman, and Love Affair, two of those getting her Academy Award nominations. And she studied with and co-founded the first studio theater with Stanislavski himself. She was a method actor. But most people wouldn't know that. Most people wouldn't identify Maria Ospinkaya with the method. The reason they wouldn't? Because she actually understood it. Because she wasn't getting into the character in between takes or staying in character for the duration of filming. She was using improvisation and rehearsal, feeling out the character and how that character would be played by her if she were that character, learning her lines, getting the correct blocking and physical action, getting the right costume, and then playing the part. And then when the director says cut and the camera stops rolling, she's just Maria Ospinkaya. By the way, the actor you probably thought I was going to mention there, Marlon Brando, he was another great method actor. Marlon Brando totally got the method. If you watch the 2007 documentary on Marlon Brando, you will hear from so many different actors that he has worked with, from Al Pacino to Johnny Depp, and they all tell the same story. In between takes, he was a cut-up. He made jokes. He fooled around on the set. He did not stay in the character in between takes because he was a good actor. He understood the method didn't mean you do that. He got that. He didn't even bother to necessarily remember all of his lines. I mean, look at this. That's Robert Duvall with his lines in The Godfather. So Marlon wouldn't have to memorize them. He understood that he was simply making the character of Terry Malloy in On the Waterfront or Vito Corleone in The Godfather speak and act the way he would if he were in that situation. And therefore, when he wasn't filming, he didn't need to stay in any type of character because he already was that character. The character was him. So, what is the method? It's just acting. The method is just acting. People don't understand enough about the time Stanislavski was writing this in and how different acting was then. He was simply codifying the guidelines for how we approach realistic performances as actors. That's it. It simply got distorted and misunderstood to a degree that you have people today, like Jared Leto, who so misunderstand it that it's almost comical. It's like a self-parody of a parody of a parody. Method acting is simply acting. You dig deep inside you when you're learning who the character is, when you've read the script, you're identifying with that character because you're making that character who you are, not the other way around. You're playing yourself in that kind of a character situation. It was well over 100 years ago. And the way people were acting were just shouting out lines towards the audience. Stanislavski's system gave actors the tools to really understand the craft better and provide more naturalistic and more realistic performances that they could give. I hope this helped a little bit in better understanding the method, but if you truly want to get a full understanding of it, just read the 3 books. They are the easiest reads in the world. They're very short. They are not written in a very complicated manner. You can get through them probably all 3 in a day. I mean, just read the books. It's all laid out there, and you will be surprised to learn that it's really just about learning your lines and getting the right costume and doing the right physical action on the stage. That's it. That's the method. If you want to learn more about it, read the books. Well, that's all I've got for this time. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. Hit the subscribe button. Comment if you can. I do like to have some engagement, especially if you can't stand the misunderstood method acting that we get from some actors today. And as always, drive safely.